Hello, darlings, and welcome to another episode of Stories with Scarlett. I just want to say, first and foremost, I have missed you all so much. It's been almost a month now since I've last seen you, and I feel like a lot's gone on, but I feel like it's been a really good break for me. I'm somebody who's just always so go, go, go. I've always got something going on. I'm always going somewhere. So it was just a really nice opportunity to just like take a much needed break. So how have you all been doing? I would love to hear below. It's been wild. Just over the last month, I've been really just trying to just kind of prioritize myself, getting a little bit more sleep, being out in nature a little bit more. I recently took a trip to the beautiful city of New Orleans, and I had so much fun. I got to see a lot of really cool spots. That's actually my second time going to New Orleans, and that city is just pure magic. I love the city of New Orleans. I love the people. I love the food. Just the overall environment. There's just an energy in the air that I can't quite describe, but it is just, I feel like it's become one of my favorite places. So I would love to make this like a yearly trip for myself, just to kind of get away and reset. My first time going to New Orleans, I was going through a lot. And so being back there the second time around in such a different space, just mentally and emotionally, it was really nice. I just love the environment there. I'm a vegetarian. So I ended up doing a little bit of research, and I found this really, really cool vegan soul food place while I was there. It was absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to link the details of the restaurant below in case you have an upcoming trip to New Orleans pretty soon. Highly recommend visiting this restaurant. I am going to make this my go-to every time I'm there now. But yeah, I love the environment. I took a lot of really cool photos. One of my recent YouTube shorts was actually a cathedral that I went to go visit there. I also did stop in a few cemeteries while I was there as well. So I'll end up compiling a little bit more footage from that trip and posting that soon. But yeah, it feels really good to be back in this space. I'm so happy to be back. I feel like traveling is just really good for your soul. I feel like it just gives you like a much needed reset. And I feel just grateful that I was even able to make the trip. I had PTO from work, so I used that. But, I know that traveling is not something that's easy for a lot of people to do. So I do feel very, very just grateful to be able to have done that this year. So that, again, I feel like I have to make New Orleans my like once a year trip, because it's just such a beautiful, magical place. So the ghost here also missed all of you. He's been such a good boy. He was such a good boy while I was out of town as well. So we're both really happy to be back. But yeah, aside from that, so a little side note, while I was in New Orleans, I was actually there the week of Valentine's. And, February, I figured for this episode, I would read some Valentine's urban legends for you all, like a couple of those, just to kind of, be in theme with what's going on this month. But while I was in New Orleans that week during Valentine's, I very specifically booked it for that week. On Valentine's Day, I didn't have a Valentine. So I just decided to make it a really nice self-care day. I went out, I went thrift shopping. I, just was kind of people watching, experiencing, the music that was going on there. There's always live music happening in New Orleans. So that was amazing to just kind of stumble upon. But I was in a bar and I decided to take a shot of tequila. And this was all on Valentine's. And so I take my shot. And then as I'm just kind of sitting there, I'm scrolling through my phone and I saw this competition. And the competition was for becoming the next Maxim cover girl. So I was just like, liquid courage, right? I was like, let me just enter the contest and just see what happens. Friends, it is so crazy. I entered this contest kind of on a whim, just truly no expectations. And I've made it through several preliminary rounds, which is blowing my mind. And I've had a few of the Maxim judges themselves vote for me in this competition. So I just feel I'm blown away by what's actually taking place and what's going on right now. There's I want to say a little over a week left for the competition. And so I will link the details below. If you feel inclined to vote for me to be the next Maxim cover girl, that would be amazing. So I will link all those details below. If you feel inclined to cast me a vote, I would really appreciate it. I super appreciate everybody that's voted for me thus far in this competition, but it's so wild what happens when you just kind of put yourself out there. You don't have any expectations. You just kind of say, hey, whatever happens, happens, and I'm okay with whatever the outcome is. And honestly, the fact that I've made it this far in the competition is so cool, and I'm, again, so grateful. The whole experience is just wild. So yes, I will have those details below, and we'll see what happens over the next week or so, You never know. But, okay, today's book, we're kind of switching things up today. Falling again into the theme of Valentine's, I wanted to read a couple urban legends out of this book called The Scary Book of Valentine's Day Lore. This book is by Tim Rayborn, and it's 50 terrifying tales of romance from around the world. And I've read a couple of the stories so far, and I absolutely love the illustrations in this book. A lot of really, really neat stories. So I figure I'll go ahead and read the back really quick. I'll read just kind of a quick introduction, and then we'll just get right into a couple of the stories. And that's how we'll have today's episode. I just really want to I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic myself, so I wanted to kind of just fall into the theme of that for this month. So hopefully you all enjoy this too. And if you're also a hopeless romantic, I would love to hear about it. Let me know. Take a little bit of a sip of my tea. What did all of you do for Valentine's Day? Did you have any special plans? Did you have a Valentine's this year? Do you even like Valentine's Day? Do you celebrate it? Let me know just down below. I would love to hear, what you ended up doing or how you ended up spending it. For me, like I said earlier, it was pretty much all self-care. That was my thing. Just take care of myself, prioritize, doing the things that I want to do, and I loved that I was able to do that in New Orleans. So it was very special Valentine's. So I was not alone, even though I didn't have a Valentine's, I didn't feel alone. So thank you, New Orleans, for making this Southern California girl feel so welcome. The smell of heartbreak. Okay. So I'll read the back for you, just to kind of get this started. So anyone who has ever suffered from a broken heart knows that love has a dark side. But just how deep that darkness can be may surprise you. The Scary Book of Valentine's Day Lore bravely ventures into the bottomless abyss, collecting tales of deadly and dastardly loves from all over the globe. Whether you love a good scare or you just can't stand the sickening sweet side of Valentine's Day, the scary book of Valentine's Day lore is all the company you'll need this holiday. I love that. And again, the illustrations in this book, so good. Oh, I will link the details to purchase this book as well below. But let's go ahead and let's start. Let's start with the introduction, shall we? What would the world be like without romance? Pretty dull, actually. All over the world, poets, artists, writers, musicians, and many more have spent centuries praising love, bringing us to a point where much of the culture we now know is built around it. Take a quick look around or just through your social media feed, right? And you'll see it. Love is everywhere. As such, romance often takes center stage in our thoughts, even especially when we would prefer it didn't. We're in love with love, so much so that we have a holiday focused on it. Of course, not everyone is in love with that development. While some people adore Valentine's Day, as many, if not more, people despise it. Yes, love is grand, but it can also be painful, either leading to heartbreak or darker consequences like anger, jealousy, revenge, and murder. This little book takes a look at some of the darker alleys on the map of the heart, from historical mishaps to weird myths, from strange urban legends and ghosts, to tragedy, murder, and odd customs, all in the name of love, romance, and desire. Just where did the idea of Valentine's Day come from anyway? And who was Valentine, if he even existed? We'll examine those questions first, before trotting off through the thorny rose bushes in search of the weird, the unsettling, and the horrifying. While Valentine's Day itself has spawned a few good tales, the lore of love cannot be limited to a single day. Just as romance is not limited to a single day, nor are the jealousies, errors, and tragedies that can attend it. Love comprehends all things, and as you'll soon see, it makes folks do some pretty strange things, such as sending a Valentine to someone you hate, stalk others who are in throes of passion, and exact your murderous intentions upon them, reassemble your one true love's body after it was brutally dismembered. All of these situations and many others will be discussed in this book, and they just might leave you feeling very differently about the affairs of the sometimes bloody heart. Love and desire will always be with us, but so will the darker parts of human nature, and when the two collide, the results can be downright deadly. So grab some chocolates, and if you're so inclined, someone you love, and explore the legends and tragedies of our romantic obsessions. I love stuff like this. I really do. I really, really do. Although I feel like I have a perpetual broken heart, almost always. But eventually one day, I know that I will find someone that is just as passionate as I am. Okay, let's go ahead. I have several bookmarks here. Let's go ahead and get to my next bookmark. Let's jump right into it, shall we? Let's jump right into this first urban legend. It's called The Hook. There are many variations on the classic urban legend of the hook, but they all involve a young couple in a car. Sometimes they are driving through a remote area, or more often, they have parked the car on a cliff overlooking town to have some privacy while they make out. They have the radio on, and a news broadcast warns that a dangerous serial killer is on the loose. Everyone should lock their doors and stay safe. The young woman wants to leave, but the young man says they have nothing to worry about. And here's where many different variations of the story pop up. A popular one has the woman asking to go home after hearing something hit or scrape their car. When they do get back to her house, they notice either scrapes on the back door or see an actual hook hanging from the door handle itself. Alternatively, the young couple hears the warning and the man brushes it off. She sees something in the trees, so he gets out to check, against her wishes, and he sees nothing. But when he comes back to the car, he finds her dead, brutally murdered, with hook slashes all over her, or with the hook embedded in her chest. One variation has the couple driving through the woods when the car breaks down. The man goes for help again, against the woman's wishes, and she turns on the car radio while waiting for him to come back. She is startled by the sound of something thumping on the roof and tries to ignore it. But eventually, she gets out to have a look. She's greeted by the sight of the killer sitting on the roof, holding the man's severed head with his hook and slamming it repeatedly into the car. Sometimes she sees her love's body hanging from a tree overhead, his hands scraping against the car roof, or he's hanging dead by his neck, and it's his feet bumping against the roof. Some say she leaves to go look for him and finds his body nailed to a tree. She screams and turns to run, only to slam right into the hook-wielding maniac. Or she falls asleep waiting, only to wake up and see the killer leering into the window, her boyfriend's severed head in his hand, and the car keys dangling from his hook, and so on. Now, if these stories all sound like a scene from a Friday the 13th film, you're not wrong. These kinds of serial killer-spiked urban legends are classic and seem to have originated in America in the 1950s, when more and more teenagers were able to own their own cars. These stories, which many kids probably thought were true, served as a warning to behave responsibly and not give in to temptation when alone with their boyfriends or girlfriends. After all, in the world of maniac serial killers on the loose, love and lust can be deadly. True, though. I mean, how many movies have we seen with that exact scenario, right? You know, all of these movies, sometimes it's so predictable. It's like, why did you have to leave the car? Why did you have to go down into the basement? You know, just don't do it. Don't do it. That's a thought. Anyways, let's get to our next story here. My next bookmark. This urban legend is called Emily's Bridge in Stowe, Vermont. Emily's Bridge near Stowe in northern Vermont is like many of the state's picturesque covered bridges. It's a short bridge, only about 50 feet, and so might not look all that special. However, it's the oldest surviving covered bridge in the United States, and a specific legend is attached to it of heartbreak, loss, and a ghost. The bridge was built in 1844, and the story goes that at some point afterward, a young woman named Emily agreed to meet her beloved there. They had planned to elope and arranged to meet at a certain time to slip away together. No doubt excited, Emily waited on the bridge, eager to begin her new life with this young man, only for him to never arrive. Stricken with disbelief and grief, Emily didn't bother to try to find or confront him. Instead, she found a rope and hanged herself from the rafters of the covered bridge. Of course, that should have been the end of this sad story, but Emily's spirit couldn't move on. Death changed her from a loving young woman to a spirit filled with hatred, so much so that she would appear from time to time and attack unwary travelers who crossed the bridge. Now, manifesting as an apparition with long, sharp nails, she struck out at carriages and later cars and even people, leaving nasty scratches. All of this would be terrifying to the bravest who attempt to cross the bridge at night, but of course, There is more to Emily's haunting. There are several versions of the story. Some saying she was thrown from a horse and died. Or murdered by a jealous lover. It turns out that the whole story was invented by a local woman named Nancy Wolfstead, who wanted to scare off kids from partying nearby at night and annoying her and her neighbors. This strategy backfired, though, as more and more people wanted to see the bridge where Emily had died, and maybe catch a glimpse of the horrifyingly clawed ghost herself. So it turns out Emily never existed, and her tragic death in a love story going terribly wrong is just another of so many similar legends around the world. And yet people who visited the bridge late at night have insisted that they have experienced some very strange things, ranging from ghostly lights to disembodied voices. Some recall seeing the figure of a young woman standing in the nearby distance. Some have even claimed to find scratches on their cars. Is it possible that belief in the legends of a place can give it the power to bring about some of our worst fears? Has Emily been created simply because enough people have believed in her? Only the bridge knows for sure. Wow. I really enjoy just kind of like the multiple interpretations. You know, it's whatever you want to interpret from that story. I would like to believe that Emily is still present to this day. And if I were to ever go and visit that bridge, I would be very mindful and respectful while crossing, because I feel like her presence could still be there. So it's always important to respect the dead. Just remember that. All right. This is going to be my last urban legend that I'll read to you all today. And this one is called Stony Hollow Road in Iowa. Stony Hollow Road has a reputation for being the most haunted road in Iowa. Located outside the town of Burlington near the Illinois-Iowa border, Stony Hollow Road has been the subject of many a creepy ghost story over the years. This rural road looks normal during the day, but at night, things start to go bump, at least according to some who have experienced the unexplained while traveling along it. There is a point on Stony Hollow where a cliff rises up on one side of the road. And it was here that in the 1800s, a tragic death occurred. A young woman named Lucinda was engaged to be married to a man she was devoted to. The two had arranged to meet at this very spot, but while Lucinda made sure to be there on time, her fiancé was nowhere to be seen. As time wore on, she got more and more worried. For whatever reason, Lucinda became convinced that he had jilted her and run off with another woman. Overcome by grief, she climbed to the top of the cliff and threw herself off, falling to a tragic, gruesome death. And then the tragedy only worsened. It turned out that the man hadn't run off with anyone. He had simply been late because his cart had gotten stuck in some mud farther down the road. Lucinda had killed herself over nothing. Because of this pointless death, her spirit couldn't rest in peace, doomed to haunt this stretch of road, appearing to naive travelers in the dead of night. Many have claimed to have seen the ghostly form of a woman up on the cliff or at the roadside. But usually, Lucinda's spirit won't show up unless summoned. To do that, someone must call out her name 3 times in a row. If someone does this, the would-be ghost hunter might catch a glimpse of her on the cliff or nearby. However, this is a dangerous game. For if Lucinda shows up and she lays a rose at the feet of the summoner, it means they will die the next day. That's a pretty big risk to take, but of course, it hasn't stopped many curious people from going to Stony Hollow Road and pressing their luck in the hopes of seeing something supernatural. Such a glimpse, while extraordinary, doesn't seem worth it. She's clearly a bit impetuous in matters of life and death. Wow. Well, friends, that is a perfect example of why we never want to jump to conclusions. That's the really interesting thing about love. Sometimes it turns into obsession with people, and that obsession can become unhealthy. And your brain just starts doing these wild things and coming up with all these crazy conclusions and starts making up all these stories that aren't actually real sometimes, you know? I understand that sometimes things can end up being true, but in this case, this was a life or death situation, all because she thought that he was running off with somebody else and ghosting her. No pun intended. But the moral to that story is, let's not jump to conclusions when you're dating someone, or, in the early stages of dating, because it's not worth the stress. It's really not. And also, it sounds like this is kind of a Beetlejuice situation. You say Lucinda's name 3 times and she might appear. I don't know about you all, but I respect the dead and the undead. And I wouldn't mess with something like that personally. I would just let her be, Although all of these just different places that I read about, this evening kind of has me curious about maybe just visiting those spots one day. It would kind of be fun to just go on this travel excursion and go check out all of the most haunted places in the US. Maybe that'll be something in my future. Maybe that'll be a series that we all do together one day. You never know. We'll see. But I'm just so happy to be back with you all. I hope that you all have had a beautiful month, and I would love to hear about just how your month has been going. And again, I will link all of the details to this book below, and I will link all of the details to the competition that I'm currently a part of. Well, that's all for now. It was so nice being able to read to you all again, and I'm just so happy to be back. All right, until next time, have a beautiful rest of your evening.